Hey world. I am putting on chapstick. Hey people on the internet. I am doing my hair in the camera like it's a mirror because no matter how much time I give myself before I do a reading like this, I am never actually prepared. So that's fun. Okay, alright. So I'm trying the camera horizontally this time because I've been doing it vertically, and then when I post it, it ends up with like those like bars on either side of like muted background, and it just looks bad. So I'm trying this today, but it's going to be weird because when I look directly at myself in the camera, it's like a little bit off center, I think. Maybe not. I can't tell. Does it look like I'm looking at you when I look? No, when I look directly in my own eyes, it looks like I'm looking off to the side. So I think I have to look directly at the camera, which is like off to the side. So this is, I don't know. I don't know where I'm supposed to look when I have the camera horizontal like this. So sorry everyone if I just look like I'm not knowing what I'm doing, because guess what? I don't really know what I'm doing. Don't tell anybody. I don't want word to get out that I'm not an expert. Okay, so everyone, it's January 6th. It's 2019. It's a very, very new year. And I'm continuing my reading series from my book, Watching Porn. I started this I think I started doing it in September of 2018. Every other weekend, I read a chapter from my book. This is partly to get a little bit more attention on the actual book, because Watching Porn has won awards and it's done really well. But it's, it was published by an indie publisher, a great indie publisher. But their reach isn't super huge, and when the book launched, I don't think I quite knew how much work I as an author needed to do to get the word out. And I did quite a bit, but I want to keep, I want to keep interest up. So, hello Ben. Thank you for joining me. So anyway, every 2 weeks I do a reading from this book. I read one chapter at a time. And this week I'm here to read chapter 9, which is called The Guys. It's about the first time that I went to, oh, hi, Miss Penny / Ben. It is so good to meet you, sort of, kind of. Everyone, Miss Penny Press is an awesome person. I actually don't know her super well yet. They're rather new to my worldview, but everything I know leads me to believe that they are a wonderful person. I'm sorry, I'm having like a little bit of frog in my throat, so I'm going to be clearing my throat a lot. Ben says, this is the issue with being on Facebook. Oh, the difference in names. Yeah, I had actually quite a bit of contention about what platform to use. And mainly I had to work with something that I could use easily on my phone because I don't have a working microphone on my computer right now. So I started streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook at the same time using a phone and a tablet. And when I did both at the same time, I couldn't keep good connection on both. And I was getting better numbers for my live readings on Facebook as opposed to YouTube. So I've stuck with Facebook. I know it's not everybody's favorite, and it definitely has its drawbacks, but it does seem so far to have worked out the best for me. JL says nice things, but it depends how much you trust him. Well, I'll say that I have grown to trust JL quite a lot, as he is my partner in business and in life, so fingers crossed that was a good decision. Hi, Bradley! Thank you so much for coming. It's good to see you here. Okay, I'm not super good at streaming yet, so give me a second while I try to remember what I was talking about. All right, so, okay, this is a book I wrote. It is called Watching Porn, and it is about how I became an adult entertainment industry journalist. So it's mostly like, it's written as a memoir, basically because I wanted to write a book about the porn industry, but there is so much information that could be relayed about the porn industry, because it's massive and it's spread out and it is so multifaceted that I realized I couldn't actually just write like the encyclopedia of porn. That would take me forever and would be far above my pay grade. So instead I wrote a memoir where people who don't know a whole lot about the industry are able to look through my eyes and learn the things that I learned and see more about how the industry works, especially from my perspective as a feminist and a queer woman. It's been an adventure. So I've been writing about porn professionally for, I think, going on 12 years. It started sort of accidentally. I needed a job, and the first thing that popped up was writing DVD reviews for a porn magazine, like an actual like paper magazine way back in 2007. So I started doing the reviews. I thought, oh, this is going to be super cool. And it was, and it wasn't, because watching like 10 hours at a time of pornography is kind of a lot. But, you know, it paid and I needed the money. So I thought, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And the more I watched, the more interesting I found it. Like, from a human perspective and from even sort of a sociological perspective. I started thinking a lot about how consumers interact with porn regularly. And this was back in 2007, before Pornhub was even a thing. But, you know, there was still a lot of porn online, and I started thinking about how people watch porn a lot, but they never talk about it. And I became kind of obsessed with it. So over the years, I've done porn DVD reviews, not always on DVD. I've done porn reviews since DVDs were really a thing. I've done interviews, I've done op-eds, I've written for major mainstream publications on the subject of pornography. I've met a lot of really interesting people, and I've learned a lot about the porn industry. So that's what this book is about. So I'm going to be reading today from chapter 9, which is about the first time that I went to an industry convention, and about the male porn stars that I met there. That's going to be the focus today. Ms. Penny Press says, I work with a lot of folks who do writing and have stuff published. It's hella fun to see what folks are up to. 12 years of porn journalist. Yes, oh my god. They should definitely make a movie about me, and that movie should definitely star Benedict Cumberbatch, because I want to meet him. So let's make that happen, people. Hi, Stevie. I am so glad that you made it for today, too. I love it when you're here. You have, like, such interesting questions and thoughts. Ben says, so many folks are here. Yay! So, Ben, should I say Ben, or should I say Miss Penny Press, like, when I'm talking to my camera? I want to do the right thing. And also, if you want to throw in your pronouns, I want to be correct about that. All right, sip of tea. So I realize that a lot of the time when I start these, I want to go right into the reading, but it often takes some people some time to show up, so I'm going to wait a little while. And instead, I'm going to brag a little bit about my book, because I realize I don't do it enough. I'm not super good at bragging about myself, but I've also realized that, like, I could brag about this book because it's, like, good. I did a good job. So as you can see, it's available in three formats, actually. First is hardcover. This is the super fancy, like, nice, like, matte finish, and it's got the little thingy in it and everything. It's also available in trade paperback. And it's also available, I think, on Kindle. I'm not sure if it's on any other electronic platforms, but anyway, this book is a little book. It came out from the Overlook Press in New York, which is an indie publisher. I think they're now part of, I can never remember. They were just recently acquired by a larger company, but now they're an imprint of a larger company. But for years, they were just a little indie press. And they did right by me. You know, this is a gorgeous book. I love the cover. So when it was released originally in the summer of 2017, I had this awesome book release party. It was a panel conversation between me and a few people who are my friends in like the feminist porn world at the Strand bookstore in New York City. It was a sold out event. It was so much fun, and it went really well. And after that, like, things went wild. I got good reviews from Carcass Reviews and Playboy and Bust Magazine, and from the New York Times Book Review. That's what the front of this says. It says, "Marvelous, the New York Times Book Review." And it won a gold medal Independent Book Publisher Award for sexuality and relationships. That's what this little guy means. This award is so cool because I had no idea that it had been entered in the awards, like, or that it was up for an award, or I didn't know anything about it. So I don't really know how those awards work. All I know is that I got an email saying that I had won an award, and I was like, cool, awesome. That means I get to put one of these little awesome seals on my book when it comes out in paperback, because it happened in between the publication of the hardcover and the paperback. And I was like, yay, that's cool, and I told some people about it. And then, like, weeks later, after I'd kind of forgotten about it, I got this package in the mail that had a whole bunch of stickers that I could put on the already published hardcover versions. See, it's all shiny. It had a little certificate saying that I had won an award, and it had a gold medal. It had a freaking gold medal, like, on a ribbon that I can wear around my neck. So I actually won a gold medal for this book, which is the coolest fucking thing. Okay, I identify as a man and was born a man, but I do stuff as Miss Penny and she's a lady. Okay, so if I'm referring to you as Ben, then he is appropriate, but if I'm referring to you as Miss Penny Press, then she is appropriate. Roger that. Got it. Oh, thank you. JL just came in to bring me my medal. I wasn't gonna do this, but yeah, here's my gold medal. Pretty cool, huh? It's very shiny. When I got it, I wore it constantly for like a week. I took a whole bunch of pictures of myself wearing it all over the place because I was so impressed. And it's really heavy. Yeah, so that's one of my prized possessions right there. Thank you, JL, for bringing that in. So yeah, that's a little bit about my book. It's done like really well, and I'm really happy about it because I am one of those people who has wanted to write a book since I was like 6. And this is the first one that got published. Plus, it's really cool because I am an Aquarius and I really want to help the world, and sort of the cause that I have devoted myself to is educating people about sexuality, reducing shame around sexual issues, and I think that pornography is a really, really important subject for people to discuss because it's a big part of many of our lives, and I think it's important that we understand it and respect it and treat it, you know, with some gravity. So I'm super glad that my work on the matter has done well, and I just wanted to brag about it a little bit. So all that being said, if you're interested in actually getting a copy of the book, you can get it in most places that books are sold. Lots of actual brick and mortar bookstores have it. It's also available online at, I think at Powell's, at the Strand, at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and you can also, if you'd like, order a copy from me. It's available on my website. I'll put a link up in the show notes. You can get a signed copy if you would like. I have them available. So, well, there's lots of chat happening. Hang on. I'm a little bit behind. That is a chonky gold medal. It is, right? That's big. Can you show the gold medal one more time? Yes. Da-da-da-da. Right up in your face. Oh, I need to like polish it. It's got some little scratchiness on it. We just had it hanging in the kitchen where everybody can see it, because the kitchen's sort of like the center of our house. It's usable as a weapon if you ever need to defend your title. That is true. I could definitely use this as a weapon, but I have to be very careful not to wear it when boating, because if I were to fall in, this thing would take me straight to the bottom. Oh, sorry. Ooh, that was really gross. Sorry. Julian wanted to see it. Here, I'll hold it up for a little while, Julian. I know it's backwards for you guys, but it says IP, it's Independent Publishers. The Independent Publishers Book Award. Let me invite you to my Discord, Lynsey. It is an adult enterprise section where we have real adult entertainers discussing issues real to them. Your voice would be a wonderful one to add. Oh, that sounds super interesting. Because I know that Miss Penny Press does drag, right? And drag is awesome. And it definitely counts as, like, you know, part of the sort of adult entertainment world. I've never gotten super into drag particularly, but when I lived in New York, I was pretty big into the burlesque scene. I've never done burlesque, which is one regret that I do have. I would really like to, but I never have yet. But I, for a while, was doing a series of interviews with burlesque performers in New York for a feminist magazine I was writing for called Luna Luna. And it was so much fun because I realized, like, a lot of these performers are fucking brilliant artists. And also, like, really cool, interesting, unique, intelligent people that had a lot to say. So it was really cool getting to know a lot of them. And the real bummer is that the site I had been writing for these interviews went down, and they were not able to preserve a lot of the articles. So most of those interviews that I did with burlesque performers are just gone now. Which is a real shame because, man, I really, really respect a lot of those people. Wendy! Hello! Wendy Van Straten! Thank you so much for coming and joining my little thingy that I'm doing. Everybody, Wendy is one of my oldest and best friends, and is like a super, super cool arts person. I'm not going to go into super detail because I don't know how much information she would be comfortable with me giving out, but we go way back. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, the medal was a super unexpected surprise that I'm very proud of, but also kind of just, like, bemused. Like, I can't believe that happened, you know? Okay, so let's see. I've been on here for almost 20 minutes. Maybe I should read from the book. I don't know. Oh, actually, I wanted to tell everybody about a new thing that just happened, but I forgot to get the comic book proofs. So JL, if you're listening right now, if you could bring in one of the copies of the new anthology, I want to show off that to everybody. So everyone, I don't know how much you can see. The light is really weird today because the weather is, like, all over the place, so it keeps changing. But behind me, you might be able to see some cardboard boxes. There's a lot of them in this room, and the reason is that, thank you, is that we publish comic books. And those are all comic books back there. JL is my actual delivery service. If only he could bring me Chinese food. I have been craving Chinese food for, like, weeks and I haven't gotten it. Okay, so anyway, comic books. This is the newest Oneshi Press anthology. We've been putting one of these out every quarter for the past year and a half. So this is the 7th Oneshi Press anthology. It has gorgeous cover art by Walter Ostley. I know there's a little bit of a glare, so I'm hoping you guys can get at least the idea of what this... There we go. That's a good angle. It's beautiful work. I love this cover. And it's got work from, I think, like 16 or 17 different indie creators inside this book. So there's, it's all short comics or shorter pieces of longer comics. And I wanted to show off my stuff because I don't want to go into showing everything in here. It would take a really long time. But we've got an introductory page by Rename Card. That's awesome and beautiful, and I love the color scheme here. Then we've got some guest art of Tracy Queen, which is sort of... Ooh, there's some nips in there. Oh, better get them off screen. Oh, Lord. Somebody might die. There's nipples on the loose. Yeah. Tracy Queen is my other book that I'm writing. It's a graphic novel about a feminist porn star who is also a badass and a martial artist, and, you know, it's a graphic novel. She makes cyborg clone armies to fight the evil forces of the patriarchy, because it's a graphic novel. So there are 8 new pages of Tracy Queen in this book, with art by the one and only J.L. Draco, who brought me this book in the first place. This is from Volume 2 of the graphic novel. Volume 1 will be coming out in the next few months. We don't have a solid date for it. We're waiting for the printed copies right now. And then we'll be fulfilling the rewards for the Kickstarter, which was concluded in November. And we raised all the money that we need to get this book going. So there's going to be eventually 8 books that make up the full graphic novel, and these pages are from the 2nd volume. So that's exciting news number 1. Oh, hey, JC, how's it going? It was just a pepperoni that felt on her after eating pizza? What? What did I miss? What? I mean, whatever happened, I'm into it. I mean, you know what? Okay, so I'm a vegetarian. I do occasionally eat fish. I'm trying to cut back on that, but I'm mostly vegetarian. And, like, for the most part, I don't miss meat. I don't really like meat that much, but every now and then, the idea of, like, some pepperoni on some pizza, I do kind of miss it. I feel like if I ate it now, I'd be grossed out by it, but pepperoni on pizza is so good. Okay, so there's also then, I'll go through it real quick. There's also the Z Brothers Zombie Exterminators mini-comic Part 1 by Grivante. The art in this is hilarious. We're really excited about that one, and Part 2 is going to be coming out in the next anthology. We've got some guest art by Xavier Hart, who's one of our favorite artists, and has worked with us a few times on the anthology. Then we go into the next installment of Lomac, which is a graphic novel by Miguel Colon, which is about a big blue mutant in post-apocalyptic New York-ish area. We have a little ad featuring Tracy Queen for the Erasia, which is a amazing new adult product. Oh, sorry, I keep doing that. Like, oh, hey guys, want to see my hand? Haha, it wasn't a nipple, it was pepperoni. So, interestingly enough, there was I don't actually know if she's really a porn star now, because I think she's retired, but she was doing porn for a long time, named Kendra Sunderland. And she does a lot of live streaming. She actually live streams on Twitch playing video games, and she usually wears very scanty clothing while doing so. But she also does, a lot of the time, like while she's putting on her makeup, she'll do an Instagram live stream. And I was watching it once. Like, I don't know why, I find her voice, like, really soothing, so I had, like, her live stream on while I was working, which doesn't work. Like, I can never work when I have a live stream on, but I thought I would try it. So anyway, she was putting on her makeup, and she was wearing, like, a sheer top, and you couldn't see her nipples, but you could, like, kind of imagine them, you know? And this guy comes into the live stream and says something about her pepperoni nipples, and she ignores it, and then he says it again, and again, and she finally is like, dude, what is your deal? Why are you so obsessed with my pepperoni nipples? And she starts telling everybody that apparently this guy came in, like, to all of her live streams, like, on all of her social media, and was constantly talking about her pepperoni nipples. And she just, like, shamed him in front of everyone for being, like, a creepy stalker and wanting attention and saying something stupid that nobody cared about. And then for the rest of the live stream, she kept talking about her pepperoni nipples. And it really cracked me up, because I wouldn't say that the guy was a troll per se, but he was definitely leaning toward the troll end of the spectrum, you know? And she just, like, pwned him. It was masterful. I was very impressed. One of my goals this year is to get an 8-page comic in Oneshi Press. Ooh, JC! I like that this is an idea. I am very excited to hear more about that. Everyone, JC is a Twitch live streamer, an artist, and a YouTuber, and a badass individual who I think is fantastic. So JC, if you want to put any links in here, actually, anyone who's watching right now, I think you're all great. So if anybody has, you know, links to things they're working on that you want to post in chat, I'm all for it. Go for it. Oh, no. Frog in my throat. Okay, all right, my voice is back. All right, so next comic is called Crumple. It's by Kyle Lawrence, Mac Radwanski, and Bo Christian. This is the first part of a longer piece that we may or may not see in other Oneshi Press anthologies. It hasn't been decided whether we're going to continue with it or not. This is an awesome sci-fi comic. I really like the idea. Don't want to give away too much, though, because I would be giving away the ending. And then here's the other part I really wanted to brag about. This is my first comic that I've done with someone who's not JL. He and I work together on pretty much everything. This one I really wanted to work with a female or non-binary artist, and I was really happy to find Diana Camero, who is an artist based out of Mexico. So I wrote this little 8-page script. It's called Guts, and it's about a lady named Sam who has this cat who's been living with her ever since her girlfriend left, and she kind of needed a friend, so she adopted this cat, and they're best buds, but the cat keeps leaving mouse guts all over the apartment, so she calls an exterminator, and the exterminator's like, I don't see any actual evidence of mice, I can't help you. And then things go from there, and basically we end up with super kitty killer instincts taking over. It's a twist ending, so I'm not going to show it to you or tell you what it is, but I'm super excited. This is my first, like, just little one-off comic, and I love it. So, those are both out in Oneshi Press Anthology 7. What is going on? Hey, focus. Focus on me. There we go. Along with Children of Gaia Refuge. This is JL's first standalone 8-page comic set in the Children of Gaia fantasy universe that he wrote and illustrated on his own, and it is gorgeous. Each one of these panels is a painting, basically. Like, check this out. Right? Absolutely beautiful. He spent a lot of time and energy working on this one. And we're really excited, too, because we want to have more Children of Gaia comics eventually. So this is the first one. So this is all in Anthology 7 from Oneshi Press. It's available on our website now. Right now it's available only in trade paperback format, but it will be out later this month, if all goes well, on Comixology in digital format, too. So I wanted to tell everybody about that because it's cool. I'm really happy with this one. Oh, hi, Rosetta! Thank you for joining us! Rosetta is another fabulous Twitch streamer, an amazing artist, and the sweetest, coolest person ever, as far as I can tell. Alright, I missed some chat. JC says, thank you for the compliments. You're welcome, JC. Wendy says, I have gotten back to my... Oh, diacoic glass, or diachronic... I can never remember how to say that word. Wendy makes lots of things. Wendy's sort of like an all-around artist, and like craft person. I have Wendy art of different kinds all over my apartment. Actually, right now, on my light, I have this little Jack Skellington felt that she made for me years ago. He's a little dusty now because he hangs out on my desk light all the time, and I probably should take better care of him. He's looking a little rough these days. Wendy makes jewelry with I don't remember, this type of glass. I have multiple pieces that she has made in my collection in the next room. Like gorgeous pendants, mostly pendants, and I think that there are some other pieces that she's made, but I think I only currently have pendants. And I'm really excited to hear that you're getting back to that, Wendy, because I love that work. Ben says, link to my drag queen site and business. I'm helping out Lynsey's partner and will be helping her out after that. I'm a digital marketing expert. Yes! I'm so excited about that prospect because we need all the marketing help that we can get. And we really love working with other people who are, you know, creative and subversive. That's kind of a thing that I'm into. Like I said, I'm an Aquarius. It's just how I am. The comic looks great. I love the kitty. I love the kitty too. I am so excited about that comic. Like, it's so cute. And it's exactly what I wanted. Diachroic, Wendy? All right. I always thought that there was an N in it. Like diachronic, but then it sounds like you're talking about weed, which is not... I mean, those two things might go well together, but they're not actually related. All right, okay. I have been streaming for 30 minutes. I think it's time to actually read from the book. Let's do it. Okay, so I wanted to give myself some time to get comfortable talking to everybody before I read this chapter, because this is a chapter that starts out fun and then gets really serious. You will understand why as I read, but I wanted to make sure that I was comfortable before I went into it. Ben says, I'm a Pisces Aries cusp. You're in wonderful company. Oh, Pisces Aries cusp. That must be a tough one. Although I am an Aquarius mostly, my Venus and Mars are both in Pisces, which it makes me confusing. I think it makes me a confusing person. All right. Excuse me. I'm going to take a sip of water. Got to keep myself hydrated. All right. Chapter 9, The Guys. I'm not going to go back through all of this. In the last chapter, I was talking about my first ever adult industry convention that I attended as a journalist for a magazine that I had co-founded called Whack Magazine, where we did interviews and reviews and whatnot from the adult entertainment industry. But this convention called Exotica was the first time that I had met, like, and really hung out with the people I'd been writing about for about 2 years at this point. So it was a huge experience for me. And the last chapter I wrote a lot about the women that I met, and like how they impressed me so much because they were badass business people, which is not what I had really been expecting. And I was very young and very easily impressed at the time too, so I was even more like, wow, you guys are amazing. So I talked about sort of the female porn stars that I met, and this was in 2009, September, I think, of 2009 in New Jersey. And now I'm going to talk about the male porn stars that I met, and I will also do a little asterisk by that to say that this was a big-time mainstream porn industry event. There were definitely people at this event who identified as, you know, not heterosexual and maybe not necessarily gender binary, but it was 2009. There wasn't quite as much attention. There wasn't as much recognition of gender nonconforming people in porn, and this wasn't the convention for that anyway. This was very mainstream, very male-female oriented. Just sort of giving everybody the backdrop of what we were doing. Of course, there weren't only female performers representing themselves at Exotica, New Jersey in 2009. The women comprised easily 90% of the talent there, but there was a healthy contingent of their male counterparts on hand to represent its equally important role in the straight porn industry. Gay male pornography didn't have a presence at the expo. The gay industry and the straight industry maintain a fairly strict separation, which I will address later in the book. The male talent pool in straight porn is notably smaller than the female for reasons both numerous and complicated. To name a few, and to skirt their many implications in favor of brevity, number 1, the consumer demand for female models is far greater than the demand for male models. Number 2, porn is likely the only industry in which women typically outearn men by 3 times, which makes men less likely to jump into the game than women. Number 3, there are astonishingly few cisgender men, both psychologically and physically able to achieve and maintain erections on camera in front of film crews, and even fewer are able to ejaculate on command as the job requires. With all of these obstacles set up to bar entry, it's rare for a man to decide to go into porn and actually prosper in the field. And it's just as rare for a director to give new guys a chance. Ryan Driller, the Superman of many a porn parody and a talented actor to boot, laid it out for me. Quote, "Most producers, most directors, do not want to take a chance on a new guy. I shouldn't say they don't want to, but they're hesitant, because a guy can't fake it," he said. On set, if you're waiting and hoping that the guy is going to be able to perform, every minute is money lost, if he's not going to be able to do the job. So once a studio usually finds a guy or a group of guys that they like, and they're comfortable with them, and they're getting the performances they want specifically from them, they'll latch onto them and keep them, because it's more of a sure thing. Even once they've gotten started, suffice it to say that straight male porn actors don't have it easy, so many careers don't last, making straight male porn stars quite the rare breed. At any given time, there are maybe a few dozen, and that may be a generous estimate, guys working in the industry who get regular work from big studios. A few dozen lower-tier performers who work for smaller companies, often websites that deal in more extreme content located in far-flung hubs outside LA and Vegas. And a few dozen more who appear in group scenes for low pay. These guys are not so lovingly referred to by some in the industry as mopes, a term that my editor, Jay Vegas, enjoyed using. It's safe to assume that any male actor you see in a well-produced straight porno probably works a lot. The upper crust of male talent shoots almost constantly with hundreds of female models active in the industry at all times. I've heard lots of people complain about how unattractive they find male porn stars, which I find mystifying. I mean, have you seen Ryan Driller or Manuel Ferrara? But their purpose in the skin biz isn't to be attractive, it's to perform. Mo Johnson, also known as Mo the Monster on set, told me that the impression he often gets from directors is this, quote, "You're a tool. Be what you're supposed to be." The men who excel in this role and those who can establish their personalities along with their cocks strongly enough to attract a following. This requires charisma, as well as a strict mastery of one's body that requires practice and self-discipline of a very specific kind. In short, straight male porn stars doing well enough to fly to New Jersey for a convention are hardened professionals, sorry not sorry for the pun there, with oodles of experience and often a fair amount of pull in the industry. Most of the male performers at my first Exotica were professionals in a business in which they were highly successful and confident as hell. And it showed. You may be thinking that this sounds a bit gross, that these dudes swaggered around pounding each other on the back and smashing beer cans on their foreheads to display their virility. Given the dispiriting nature of heteronormative maleness in America, particularly in 2009, I also assumed that the egregious displays of dominance would be their modus operandi. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that the majority of male performers at Exotica were possessed of a quiet, smooth, and sane self-assuredness that was far more inviting. I saw Mr. Marcus from across the expo and made a beeline for the subject of my first interview. He was dressed simply in dark jeans, a navy blue t-shirt, and his trademark baseball cap, smiling at the fans and coworkers who greeted him. He wasn't as tall as I had expected, but he was just as heavily muscled as he looked in the movies, and he exuded a laid-back confidence that drew me in. When I introduced myself, he smiled warmly and came out from behind his signing podium to wrap a very large arm around my waist in a surprisingly soft embrace. He shook my hand gently, his dark brown eyes never leaving mine. I automatically turned bright red. I had expected him to be attractive, but I was unprepared for his magnetism, and I felt myself responding to his maleness the way I thought only naïfs in romance novels did. I may have actually swooned. He told me he hoped to see me later in the weekend, and I stammered a response before tottering away like a turned-on ninny. Over the course of the weekend, our paths crossed multiple times on the show floor and at after-hours parties. Each encounter grew friendlier until, on the last day of the convention, I sought him out at his signing booth to say goodbye. He stepped away from his booth, ignoring the line of fans, and placed a hand on the small of my back with expert precision. He drew me close and whispered to my ear, "You're leaving? But I was looking forward to see you running around my hotel room naked tonight." My jaw dropped. I felt myself flush from head to toe. I stepped out of the hug and stared at him with saucer eyes while his face crinkled into a broad smile. At a loss for words or appropriate behavior, I turned on my heel and giggled my way out of the convention. The whack crew also crossed paths with Shawn Michaels, an industry veteran whose work spans decades of hardcore films. Michaels is often cast as the male bull who humiliates less masculine husbands, a dominant and sexually insatiable force of nature. But in real life, he is courteous, articulate, and immaculately dressed. When we met him at the hotel bar, he was wearing a three-piece black pinstripe suit with an impeccably starched white button-up and black bow tie, a matching black pinstripe fedora, and black dress shoes, with spats. He looked every inch the gentleman, and we introduced ourselves as the whack crew. He followed through on that first impression. We expressed our excitement at meeting him, and asked if he would like to adjourn to our room for some pre-gaming before the party started. And so we found ourselves stuffed into the cramped hotel room with one of porn's greatest legends and a few hangers-on from smaller production companies in the New York area, engaged in a heady conversation that ranged over topics as vast as the Buddhist outlook on life, to as trivial as the choice of carpet color on the expo show floor. I was captivated by Shawn. After an hour, he raised his beer bottle in a toast and told the room at large that he hoped he wasn't offending anyone by saying so, but that he was honored to be in my presence, because I was a truly beautiful woman inside and out. Then he leveled a look of the most serious sexual intention I have ever seen right at me. Again, I went scarlet. Damn my Irish heritage. I mumbled something about being my own woman. And then I added that I was actually in a relationship with Matthew, who was sitting right next to Shawn. Without batting an eye, Shawn turned to Matthew and raised his glass again in congratulations, and offered apologies if he had offended either of us. He turned back to me and smiled. "Keep on being a lady," he said. The lust was still apparent in his eyes, and I squirmed at its delicious intensity. When Shawn eventually left, one of the hangers-on who had watched the scene unfold burst into laughter. "Holy shit, Lynsey," he gasped. "Do you know what would have happened if you had gone back to his room?" "No," I replied, confused. "What do you mean?" "Have you ever seen any of Shawn's movies?" He arched his eyebrow. "Actually, no," I admitted. "It would have been like this," he said. He balled up his fist in front of his face, then mimicked the lowering of a zipper noise and dropped his forearm with a thunk onto the dresser. The implication was that Shawn's penis was the size of John's forearm. Since then, I have seen a few of Shawn's films, and he was right. But Shawn Michaels is really sexy, you guys. So is Mr. Marcus. They're both really sexy, and they were both so into me, and I had no idea what to do with it. Woo! Exciting times. Okay, I'm going to take another sip of tea because now we're transitioning from fun and sexy stories into less fun stuff. How's everybody doing out there? I keep moving into like the light and then everything gets glary, but I need a little bit of the light to be able to read. Okay. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Am I ready? Let's find out. Most of the successful male porn stars I've met since the first Exotica convention fit the kind and confident mold. But it must be said that not every guy who has sex on camera for a living exudes the same warm, gracious presence as my two paramours in Edison that weekend. Every kind of person you meet outside the porn industry is also represented within it. And that applies to creepers whose self-confidence is higher than it needs to be. If you're thinking Ron Jeremy, you're right. On the first day of the expo, my cohorts and I spotted the hedgehog signing autographs nearby, and I jumped into his signing line immediately. A picture of me with Ron Jeremy would be great for our budding magazine, and maybe I could schedule an interview. The white Whack magazine t-shirt that we had printed were perfectly suited for signing, so I whipped out a Sharpie and stood at the ready while I waited for his attention. When it was my turn, I approached Ron with a smile that faltered before we even said hi. After years of occupying the throne as porn's most recognizable star, Ron didn't place too much importance on maintaining a strictly professional demeanor. He was wearing a stained t-shirt, sweatpants, and Crocs. His thinning hair and mustache were both in disarray, and his stomach jutted out into the space between us as I offered my hand and introduced myself. Ron ignored my preferred handshake and slipped his arm around my waist, pulling me into a close embrace around his gut and grinning lasciviously. "Hi, baby," he said. Then he kissed me on the lips. The kiss was pretty chaste, but in the second that it lasted, I experienced a riot of shock, embarrassment, and annoyance. But I told myself I couldn't be too angry that Ron Jeremy's mustache was scratching my upper lip. I had been waiting patiently in a long line of fans who probably had hoped for a kiss, after all. Ron was in his natural habitat, and he had no idea that I was approaching him in a professional capacity. His professional capacity was having sex with women. All things considered, a kiss wasn't so bad, even though I wasn't happy about it. As Ron pulled back, I could hear my comrades from Whack magazine giggling and snapping photos of my bright red face. I ignored them and tried my best to forge ahead, asking Ron if he would sign my Whack t-shirt. He leaned in with the Sharpie I offered and made a small RJ with a heart that took only a few seconds to complete. I mugged a faux shocked expression for the cameras gathering nearby as he leaned over my chest, but then, egged on by the onlookers and my smiling face, Ron grasped my shoulder, turned me away from the crowd, lifted my shirt, grasped my left bra cup, and proceeded to sign my breast, all without missing a beat. Mortification doesn't adequately describe my emotional state at that moment. Revulsion might be closer. And horror that Ron Jeremy was gripping my bosom in such a way that, though nobody else could see, he was able to view my entire breast, nipple and all, without my consent. And rage that my boyfriend and my editor were standing by, laughing and snapping photos from the sidelines as I was manhandled by a gross old man in front of a crowd. Important note, this was an ex-boyfriend. I'm no longer with this person. In my memory, this signature took a long time, significantly longer than the one on my t-shirt. But it probably wasn't more than a few awful seconds. At least, I hope it didn't take long, because the uproar of emotions inside me left me so stunned that I couldn't summon a reaction before he dropped my breast and pulled my shirt back down. I'd like to think that if more than a few seconds had elapsed, I would have come up with an appropriate reaction, like slapping him in the face. As it was, I just plowed ahead with my sales pitch as if nothing had happened. I introduced myself and the magazine, gave him one of my business cards, and told him I would love to get an interview sometime. He grabbed a stack of business cards held together by a rubber band, riffled through them for a moment, and, when he found the appropriate card, handed it to me, while leaning in for another kiss. I endured it, and then I staggered away from the scene of the groping and collected myself, and assessed the situation. I looked down at the card he had given me, a business card for the hotel we were both staying at, with his room number scrawled at the top beside his standard RJ and heart signature. No need to carry cards of your own when your face is synonymous with sex, I suppose. Wait, hang on. Okay, I can read. I promise I can do this. Thank you, JL. That night at the after party, Jay Vegas, Matthew, and I had been led into the VIP section by Tegan Presley, a multiple award-winning performer and former ballerina and gymnast, with a sweet smile and a sleeve of gorgeous tattoos. We were having a few drinks and watching the industry royalty interact when we saw Ron, this time in more party-appropriate attire. I believe he had a suit jacket on and jeans. Immediately, Vegas made a show of pointing him out. "Hey, Lyns, it's your buddy! You should say hi!" I threw a few swear words and a glare his way before turning to look pointedly in the other direction. A few minutes later, however, Ron had worked his way around the room. I looked away to avoid any recognition, but Vegas stepped forward. "Hey, Ron!" he yelled over the thumping music. "Check it out! Your signature's still there!" He pointed at me, indicating the shirt dress I was now wearing and what lay beneath it. Ron smiled at me, the memory of our earlier rendezvous twinkling in his eye, and said something to Vegas that I couldn't make out over the music. Then he stepped toward me, intoning, "This won't take long." Without ascertaining my consent at all, Ron Jeremy moved behind me, his stomach pressing into my back. He grasped me firmly around the waist, and without so much as a "how do you do," he began to sort of gnaw on my neck. I'm not sure what he was aiming for, sensation-wise, but I'm confident he was trying to show off his sensual prowess by making my knees buckle under the wave of overwhelming lust he was sure I would experience. That is not the reaction that I had, though. I think horror would be the most fitting term. For the few seconds that this humiliating scene lasted, I fought an internal war between shrieking, slapping, and running away, and gritting my teeth and bearing it. The atmosphere didn't seem to lend itself to a freak-out. I was very much on Ron's territory here, surrounded by industry folks, many of whom had been far more intimate with Ron than I was, than a mere neck-gnawing. But their encounters with him were consented to, pre-negotiated, and paid for. Would any of his co-workers have looked kindly upon me screaming and flailing at one of their elder statesmen? After all, I was here willingly, with the specific intention of interacting with porn stars. Would showing my true colors as a dyed-in-the-wool prude do me any favors? Would it be better to just let it happen and live with the embarrassment? Honestly, I just froze while all of this went through my head. My autonomic nervous system's response was to play dead like an opossum. He finally drew back and cheerily noted the crimson cast of my face before nodding at Vegas, whose eyes had bugged out behind his thick glasses. "Gets 'em every time," Ron said before turning to me. "I'll see you later," he grinned, waggling his bushy eyebrows, and then he was gone. Both Vegas and Matthew burst into laughter. I gave them what can only be described as a death look. "You threw me to the fucking wolves, you rotten bastards," I ground out. Tegan, who was sitting nearby, motioned me over to her table. "Did you just get attacked by Ron?" she asked. I gulped, uncertain if I was going to scream, cry, or laugh. "I don't know what to do right now," I told the group. Tegan lifted an eyebrow. "Get a penicillin shot," she said. The rest of the evening passed in an increasingly drunken haze. I busied myself with downing vodka, chatting with performers, watching the fans outside the VIP section, and eventually ending up in an after-after party in the penthouse lounge of the hotel. The memories of Ron's mouth and mustache on my skin were receding in the face of the beverages I had consumed, and by the time we were unceremoniously kicked out of the lounge by hotel security at 3:30, I had nearly blocked it out. That's when I noticed a missed call from a number I didn't recognize, which had come in around the time the official after-party had shut down at 2 a.m. The text message had popped up about a minute after the voicemail had been left. "Hi, Lynsey," the text read. "This is Ron Jeremy. Please give me a call when you have a chance." I refused to think about it further, found my hotel room, and passed out. The next morning I checked my voicemail. "Hi, Lynsey, it's Ron Jeremy. I noticed that we're staying in the same hotel tonight. Why don't you give me a call or stop by my room later? I'd love to see you." I wasn't surprised exactly, but it was mystifying to me that a man who is literally world famous for having sex with thousands of women for pay was so keen to get into my pants on his time off. Didn't he get enough play without stalking the hotel bar? Weren't there enough adoring fans and professional acquaintances in attendance with whom his chances might have been better? Did he see me as some kind of challenge since I hadn't melted in my panties when he chewed on my neck without my consent? I've worked hard at avoiding Ron for the rest of the weekend. Our paths crossed a few times, but he showed me no special recognition, either because he had actually forgotten who I was, or because he took my silence as a slight. Either way, I was fine with the arrangement. And in the years since that first Exotica Expo, I have never spoken to him again. In late November 2017, Rolling Stone published an exposé in which a dozen women, myself included, came forward with allegations of Mr. Jeremy sexually violating them. My experience was far from the most egregious among them. 2 months later, Ron was banned from the 2018 Adult Entertainment Expo and AVN Awards for the first time in 38 years. Whew. So there's a little bit more, and I'm just going to plow through it. I see there's a lot of chat going on, but I just want to, finish this. It's strange to think about after so many years, and after writing thousands of words on the topic of sexual consent. Today, I am appalled by my behavior with Ron. I wish I had pushed him away, screamed bloody murder, accused him publicly of assault, and stormed away after the first kiss. It would have been a good idea to take Vegas and Matthew aside and rip them apart for their complicity in both the show floor spectacle and the after-party debacle. A complete freakout would actually have been the mature, responsible, correct thing to do. But, as a rape survivor who has done a lot of work in the time since to understand the complicated intersections of assault and shame, I don't want to put too much pressure on myself either. As do most women who are sexually assaulted, and men, and non-binary folks. I had blamed myself completely for my own experience when it happened. I spent far too many hours obsessing over the nausea-inducing memories of the incident, telling myself I should have done something different, that I could have stopped it from happening if I had just done this, that, or the other thing. The anger and guilt over a situation that I couldn't have controlled hung over me for years, hurting me just as surely as it did the man who victimized me. It took me years of soul-searching to understand that I wasn't at fault for what had happened, and even more years to forgive myself for a crime I hadn't committed. and I have no interest in blaming myself further for what Ron Jeremy did. The infraction isn't nearly so grave, but my immediate desire to implicate myself in its root says volumes about how upsetting it was. And so, as is often the case, hindsight is far clearer than the cloud of conflicting emotions experienced in the moment. Writing about it now, I'm feeling the too familiar mixture of nervous energy, sweaty palms, and general greasiness that comes over me when I recall trauma. It may sound trivial to some, given that I was never in dire physical danger, but I can't state strongly enough how having one's agency forcibly removed can leave a person with a piercing sense of violation. My body hadn't really been harmed, but my dignity was bruised, along with my sense of physical autonomy. And my budding respect for porn stars was battered, not to mention my feelings for my friend and my boyfriend who had stood by and watched. And this is where it's important to note that the charges of second-wave anti-porn feminism are not always wildly off target. Don't misunderstand me. The idea that all pornography is rape is patently ridiculous. I absolutely and unreservedly support any adult human being's participation in whatever non-harmful, consensual sexual behavior they wish. And I do not think that the medium of pornography is inherently demeaning to women, at all. But I do recognize that within the historically male-dominated culture of the porn industry, where performers are quite literally selling their sexual bodies as commodities for consumption, the slope down to seeing human beings as sexual commodities can get slippery. Male privilege in the social contract that allows pornography to place monetary value on female bodies is the same male privilege that allows certain members of the porn industry to see women as things to be used. Clearly, not all of the men in the industry see the world this way. I don't believe Shawn Michaels, for instance, would ever have treated me with such disrespect. But I do think that, in my interactions with Mr. Jeremy, the male-privileged, female-objectifying mindset presented itself clearly. I was a thing to him, a thing that he could use to remind everyone present of his status. And in his mind, my being there was reason enough to assume that I wanted it. Gross. I do believe, however, that in the years between the Ron incident and the publication of this book, the landscape has changed significantly, both within the porn industry and without, when it comes to sexual misconduct. There has been a huge growth in public discourse about the difficult gray area in which I found myself with Ron that weekend. Issues like male privilege, slut-shaming, victim-blaming, and sexual autonomy have been discussed publicly and debated hotly in America and around the world. Especially within the adult entertainment industry, efforts to highlight actor consent in everything from gonzo scenes to kink films have become more prevalent. Although porn has been maligned for teaching young men that women always want it, the past few years have seen the industry taking pains to demonstrate otherwise. The fantasy aspect of pornography has been discussed in interviews, books, lectures, academic inquiries, panel discussions, and elsewhere, as performers and consumers learn to tease apart the difference between what an edited porn scene shows an audience, what Seymore Butts described to me as a cut-up and glorified and perfect version, versus the intense negotiations, heavy editing, and nitty-gritty reality of performances. Many companies now shoot pre- and post-scene interviews to accompany sex scenes, featuring actors talking about what they're about to do, negotiating sex acts with each other, and enjoying the afterglow. I think that if Ron Jeremy tried to gnaw on my neck without my consent today, I would have the fortitude to rebuke him. And after the Rolling Stone article and his subsequent persona non grata label at AVN, I'm pretty sure I'd have the support of many people in the room if I did. But back then, I tried to laugh it off. After all, it was a funny story, even if I broke into a sweat when I told it. Okay, whew, so that's that whole chapter. And here is a photo that I kind of love and kind of hate, from right when that whole thing started. So I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, Ron, sign my shirt," so he signed my shirt. And I was like, "Oh, haha," like mugging for the camera, before everything else went down. The real bummer of that is that after this part, which, I asked for and was funny, when he, took my boob out, people were still snapping pictures because we had been mugging for the camera, so that was upsetting. Although I will say in his defense at that moment, he did, purposefully turn me away from the camera. So, he did get his kicks, but he was at least aware that maybe I wouldn't want everybody there to see my tit. So that was cool, I guess, as far as it goes. Yeah, so that experience sucked. the funny thing is that, like, I spent a long time afterwards thinking it was really funny, or at least talking about it like it was really funny. Because, like, you know, it is a funny story that, like, oh, Ron Jeremy groped me and gnawed on me, like, but it took me a really long time to realize that the fact that, like, right now my palms are sweating, and I feel all, like, jittery and nervous and greasy, was the same feeling that I got when I really dug into memories of other assaults. It took me a while to realize that it was actually assault. So writing that chapter was a lot. And then after the book came out, I was contacted by a journalist who was writing for Rolling Stone about Ron Jeremy's sexual assault allegations. And I was like, yeah, that's a real thing that happened. So I talked to them. And I since then have gotten to be friends with another woman who was assaulted much more intensely than I was by him. Actually, I think at the same convention. Might have been a different year. Might have been the year after that. I'm not sure. But every time since then that I've gotten close to crossing paths with Ron, I have avoided him. I really doubt that he remembers me. And especially, like, I look very different now. I had really long hair then. I've got short hair now, etc. I'm 10, 12 years older, whatever. Actually, no. 10 years older now than I was then. But I don't want to see that guy. Ugh. Okay, I'm going to read chat. I see that there's been a lot going on. Okay. JL says, thank you for clarifying that when I said my boyfriend, I was not talking about JL. Talking about somebody else. JC says, honestly, it's very hard to react appropriately in a moment like that. You don't have time to really process what's happening. That is very true. I had no idea how to react. All I can imagine is that, like, my eyes must have been gigantic. That's all I know about my response, you know? JL says, I'm filled with rage every time I hear this story. I'm sorry. So am I. I am also filled with rage. That's what this look is. Ben says, indeed, I don't really have much to add besides my apologies. And he says, what the fuck? Ron's a zombie. Ron, okay, let's take a moment to pick apart the situation. Ron Jeremy started doing porn, I believe it was in the late 70s. I don't know how old he is now. I think he's in his late 60s. He hasn't really been performing in porn for about the last 10 years. I think he's done, like, a scene here or there. But he's sort of like, he's perceived as sort of like the elder statesman of porn. You know, he's like, everyone loves him. Oh, Ron, you're kind of gross. Your hygiene sucks. You eat food off of other people's plates. I've heard this from multiple people. But you're Ron. You're just Ron Jeremy. Everybody loves you. And everybody does love him. Everywhere he goes, people stop him to get their picture taken with him, you know. People love him because he has this very sort of like teddy bear persona, like, oh, I'm just a simple guy that just got famous for having sex with tons of women. I do think that, like, generally speaking, I don't think he has ill intentions. I don't think he thinks of himself as somebody who wants to victimize women, and I don't really think that that's his idea. But I do think that he's been in the industry at such a high level for so long that the fact that women's bodies have been so available to him for so long and are most of the time willingly offered, you know, it must be really hard to live most of your adult life with that relationship to women being literally what made you famous, and not start to feel entitled to that, whether people want that from him or not. And that sucks, you know, but I was thinking about it this morning. I was thinking, like, he's kind of like my cat. Like, and I think that we all are in some ways like this, right? Like, you get used to something, and then you believe that you are entitled to it, you know, that it's your due. Like when I give my cat treats. If I give him like 3 treats, he's like, oh, that was great. But if I give him like 6 treats, then he wants more treats and more treats and more treats. And then he doesn't even want to eat his food anymore because he just wants treats, you know? And I think that that's just how our brains work. You know, you get used to something and then you expect it to be like that and then you want more. And I think when it comes to sex, it makes just as much sense as anything else that's good, you know? But the problem with it is that people are attached to the bodies that you want. And that's where a lot of the issues around consent come from. You know, people want things and often don't do the hard work of seeing and interacting with the person inside the body. And that's a thing that I find difficult to talk about because I'm a champion for pornography. I think pornography is a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing. I think that, especially in a culture like ours here in America where prostitution is illegal, porn is like, it's important. We need a legal, safe outlet for our urges, many of us, much of the time. So I'm a champion for porn, and I think it's great. And I think that a lot of people who say really bad things about porn, how it's all evil and stuff like that, are silly. That's not true. It's not all evil. But it definitely can foster an environment where you have people like Ron Jeremy who lose perspective, and, you know, think that they're entitled to people's bodies because they do become accustomed to the idea that bodies are objects and the people attached to them are not important. And I mean, like I said before, I think it's kind of a function of the human brain. And if people are not regularly reminded about the humanity of other people, it can be lost. Not that everybody would lose sight of that. There are certainly lots of amazing people who wouldn't go that way, but I think it's just important for me to keep in mind that even though I'm a proponent of pornography, and I think that most people who make porn are great people, a lot of the stereotypes about porn, you know, objectifying women and hurting women and all of that, they really can be true because there really are people in the world, like a good number of whom gravitate toward the porn industry, who see no problem with getting what they want out of people's bodies regardless of who lives inside them. So those people are out there, you know. I don't think that I would necessarily call Ron one of, like, the malicious people. There are malicious people in the porn industry who like hurting people. That is true. But there are malicious people who like hurting other people in literally every industry. Porn gets a real bad rap for it, though, because a lot of that happens on camera. But like I said, I don't think that Ron Jeremy has ever really had, like, a bad intention. He just I don't think he has much perspective on other people at this point in his life. And I hope that maybe after not being allowed an AVN last year, after that article came out and after whatever backlash may have happened with him, I hope that he's thought about it. I know that when the Rolling Stone article came out, he issued a statement that was just like a complete, like, oh, that's bullshit, none of that ever happened, you know, it was not even attempting to be an apology, and then after that he wasn't allowed an AVN. So because he's not actually, like, an active participant in the porn industry anymore, like, he's not actually making money on performing scenes anymore, it's hard to know, like, what impact all of this has had on him, because he's not making his money on doing porn, so it's hard to know if the porn industry has, like, roundly rejected him or not. He's making most of his money on endorsement deals and stuff like that, speaking engagements, I think, stuff like that. So it's not really going to be measurable to know if he has changed because of what happened. But I hope that he has. I don't think that Ron Jeremy's a bad guy. You know, I don't think that he's, like, running around like, ooh, how can I victimize women? I think that there are comparatively very few people in the world like that. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to keep reading chat. That's all I have to say at the moment. JL says, the fact that this is just like normalized behavior to so many people. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was really the thing about how Ron got away with a lot of this for a long time, is like, I mean, I even had the idea pass through my head when it was happening, like, well, I'm on his turf. You know, all the people around me want him to be kissing them and groping them, and I don't, so I'm the weirdo, you know? It's super normalized. And especially in adult industry environments, the lines there can get a little bit blurred, because a lot of the people at any adult industry convention have all, you know, slept together, and with different partners at different times, but like they've pretty much all like at some point crossed paths sexually. And, you know, in an environment like that, there can just be sort of a level of permissiveness that you would have with a similar group in your own life. Like if you had a group of people that you were friends with and, you know, you all kind of slept with each other all the time and you were all cool with it, after a while you'd start to be a little bit more like handsy with each other probably than you would with other groups of people. And that's legit, that's fair. So especially in an adult industry convention like that, the lines of like what's really strictly speaking okay and what's not can get blurry. I do think that in the past few years, they've gotten a lot more aware of it. And so like when you go to a comic convention or something now, and there are signs everywhere that say like cosplay is not consent, there are similar signs now at adult industry conventions. You know, it's not expected that you're allowed to just touch people because they're there. And that applies to both the fans interacting with the stars and the stars interacting with the fans. So that's been really cool to see. JC says, I've made scenes over people doing less to my friends. I can't imagine acting like that's okay or normal. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, my friend and my boyfriend, I think they were also very, like, shocked and had no idea what to do. And I know especially because I was in public in both situations, I really wanted to just laugh it off and keep going. You know, like I didn't want to have a huge scene. So I was mad. I was fucking mad. But I also didn't want to like throw a fit in the middle of a party. So I think I probably gave them the impression that it was okay to kind of laugh it off, which, whatever. It's how it happened. It was 10 years ago. I can't be mad at myself about it. And I know you guys aren't asking me to be. It's just how my brain works. So, let's see. Stevie says, I think it's so amazing that you were able to write about this. Thank you, Stevie. I mean, it took me a really long time to be able to write about it and, like, really sit with it and think about it and, like, put it into, like, real perspective instead of the, like, ha, so this funny thing happened to me story that I've been telling for years. That took a lot. JC says, this is really brave to talk about. I'm glad you realized it wasn't your fault. Yeah, it took a while, though. I mean, for anyone who watches this who has been assaulted, it takes a lot. We're just so... I don't know if we're taught to think it's our fault or if it's, like, part of our wiring or what, but it definitely comes naturally to me. And it has in most situations in which I've been assaulted in my life. Ben says, this to me is a letter of strength, and the fact that people would agree with Jeremy even now sickens me. Yeah. You know, some people really just don't value sexual consent and autonomy. Like, I don't know why. I can't imagine why people would be like, it's not a big deal, because it is. I mean, obviously there's like centuries of people acting like it's not a big deal behind that, but like, when it's presented to you as a big deal and like people actually talk about their experiences and how it's fucked them up, like I don't understand how some people can just be flippant about it, because it really messes people up. And like most people, honestly most people I know have dealt with some form of sexual assault and being victimized by it. And that means there's a whole lot of fucked up people out there walking around with trauma that they're trying to deal with, and some people are just like, I don't understand that. It could be a response to their own trauma. A lot of the time I feel like sexual assault gets put on this like spectrum of like harm where non-sexualized physical violence, like where murder is like tip-top, you know, and then they're like, well, at least you didn't get murdered. And it's like, yes, that is very true. I'm very glad that I didn't get murdered, and murder is fucking horrible. But that's like saying that, like, you can't be sad that your cat died because somebody else's mom just died. Like, no, you can be sad about both, and you can be fucked up about both, because they're both forms of violence. And, like, for one person, maybe that spectrum looks different. I don't know. But the point is that they're all on the same spectrum, and that everybody's brain and body reacts differently, and you can't know what someone else is going through. And so to try to say that, like, oh, well, at least this didn't happen, or, you know, it's not that big of a deal, it's just cold. And that it's not helping anything, literally anything. Wendy says, hindsight is 20/20, as they always say, but your charm and wit made a very compelling story, and bad behavior comes back to bite you. And his ban from the events made the story's end perfect. I agreed, especially because I don't remember exactly when the Rolling Stones story came out, but it was very soon before the AVN convention, and I ended up being at that AVN convention in January of last year, and I was concerned that I might see Ron, and that he might recognize me because I'd been a part of that story. So I actually, like, kind of on purpose maintained a very low profile, because I didn't find out that he had been banned until, like, the second or third day of the convention when it was almost over. So, like, the whole time I was on, like, high alert looking for him, because I was like, he might not have remembered me until this story came out. And now, if I'm walking around the convention and I happen to run into him, he might be pissed. And I don't know what that's going to look like. So when I found out that he was banned from AVN and I had been worrying needlessly the whole time, I was like, well, shit. I guess I didn't have to smoke weed the entire weekend. Actually, I didn't. I didn't do that. I ate weed the whole weekend. Vegas is great, guys. Thank you for sharing this with us, Lynsey. You're welcome, Stevie. Stevie says, oh God, but I don't know what she said that to now, because it's been a really long time. Oh no, I just did a weird thing with my phone. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Wendy says, oh God, who would want to see him perform now? He really has not taken good care of himself in later years. It is true. Bradley says, I have to go, but I really enjoyed listening. Thank you for sharing. I'm so glad that Bradley was here. I don't know if you're still here. You're probably not, but if you are, Bradley, thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone being here, because this was a tough one. Most of the chapters of this book, I think that's the most personally upsetting. There are other chapters that have other upsetting things in them, but this is the hardest one for me, like, in my heart, you know. JC says, it's important to remind people how they may be making other people feel. I think it could help prevent a lot of pain. I hope so too, JC. I think that for most people that's the truth. Being made aware of pain that you've caused will change your behavior. There are some people who don't feel that way. I think a lot of that is because of trauma that they themselves have experienced, and then, you know, there's also people that are, like, legitimately, like, psychopaths who can't moderate that way. I always try to remind myself about the psychopaths out there. Because, you know, like, I really strongly believe in, like, be yourself, do what makes you happy. Like, as I've said before, I'm an Aquarius. I think everybody should be weird as hell. But then, like, I listen to, like, some true crime podcast or something, and I'm like, well, most people should be themselves and do what they want. There are some people that shouldn't do what they want, because if what you want to do involves hurting other people, you shouldn't do it. And you should probably seek out a whole crap ton of therapy. JC says, to what you said about I don't think he means to be a bad person, I think that's an interesting distinction that people don't really realize. There's a lot of nuance in people's behavior and intentions. Oh man, I keep pressing the wrong button. Okay. There's a lot of nuance in people's behavior and intentions. It's not like people are sitting there plotting what kind of horrors they can get away with. Except for the bad people, the psychopaths and stuff. Just always have to point that out. People are conditioned to think the way they behave is normal and acceptable. They justify their behavior because we think there's a clear line in the sand between violent attacker hiding in the bushes and violating someone's consent in other ways. There's not. There's shades of gray, and it's complicated. We have to teach people from a young age how to be respectful and remind them regularly. Oh my God. JC, yes, you are so right. So right. And this is something I have, like, had a little soapbox sitting next to me at all times for, like, many years, so I can just drag it over and stand on it anytime I get the opportunity. I feel like a lot of what happened when Me Too, you know, was like a huge movement, and still is, but like when it was new and there was a lot of fire behind it, people were saying things like, okay, well, now what? Like, okay, so we know that all of these people have been hurting people. Okay, what do we do? What's the answer? Like, we can't drag all these people into court. What, do you want to bring all these people and, like, put them in jail? And the answer is no. No. The reason that we need to tell all of these stories about things that have happened to us is not because we want to put everybody in jail. It's not because there's, like, some thing that needs to be done. The only thing that needs to be done is that these stories need to be told. People need to be listened to. Because, yes, the stories where there is an attacker hiding in the bushes who assaults some stranger for no reason, that's fucking horrible. But the much, much, much more common story is something that's much more of a gray area, like what happened to me. Or like, you know, when somebody that you know and trust walks you home from a party and then sort of coerces you into doing something that you're not comfortable with, and then the next morning you wake up and you feel really bad about it. That type of thing, the gray areas, it's not that there's something that needs to be done to the perpetrators in those situations many times. What needs to be done is we need to talk about it, because the more we talk about those gray areas and what should happen and what could happen and what's good and what's bad about those gray areas, the more everybody will understand. If I had been raised in a world where it was okay to talk about this shitty thing that happened the other night and I don't know how I feel about it, and if I had had an ongoing cultural conversation about other things that happened like that, maybe when that shitty thing happened, I would have had more of an understanding of, like, my own bodily autonomy and what my rights are and how this person behaving this way is not okay. Maybe I would have had language to talk about it, and maybe that person would have had more of a vocabulary to understand what I was saying. Like, it's not that I want to victimize people who have victimized me. What I want is our culture to be able to talk more about all of this so that we all have more of a context to place our own experiences in, and we all have more of an understanding about our own rights. Because I think if we raised kids to be able to understand that, like, their body is their body, they have rights to it, other people doing bad things to their body is not shameful to them, like, we'd be living in a different world now. We'd be living in a world where people were less likely to put up other people's shit when it gets shady. And that would be wonderful. We wouldn't have the Me Too movement because that kind of shit wouldn't happen as much. And I think that's really the important part, is, like, as hard as it was for me to write this and read it out loud, like, it is way more important that that type of conversation gets had publicly where other people can hear it and think about their own experiences, contextualize it, talk about it with more people. So, okay, here's my soapbox, putting it aside. But I do really, really strongly believe in the importance of talking about that stuff. Wendy says, "You are so strong. We learn from everything we encounter. Life is a series of events, good and bad. Coming off the worst year of my life, 2019 is going to be better." Oh, Wendy, yeah. I feel like I don't know anyone who's like, yeah, 2018 was the best year of my life. Like, or anyone who's even just like, yeah, 2018 was okay. Like, 2018 was a bad year. It was like destined to be bad or something. I don't know. And I even, like, I had a rough 2018, but I didn't even have any, like, major calamities happen to me personally. But it was still a rough year for me personally, and watching the misfortunes of people I care about all around me was tough. But yeah, 2019, first reading of 2019, talking about hard shit to make shit better for other people in the future. So it's a good way to start, right? Stevie says, the idea of putting everyone in jail made me chuckle. No, I've literally heard people say that, like, especially when Me Too was sort of at its height. I've heard people be like, well, what are you going to do about it, Most of these things people are talking about have already passed the statute of limitations, so you can't drag them all to jail. And it was like, you are a simpleton, whoever said that. I got into quite a few conversations about that, mostly arguments on Facebook. And I will actually say, someone said something like that, and he started it off with a whole, like, women just want to see people put in jail, but they can't. And meh. And I actually, like, laid out that conversation saying, like, no, we want to talk about the things that have been happening to us, and, like, because people are listening now, and it's really important that we work out our trauma and that we help other people understand, like, that this is not okay. I did that whole argument. And this is a person I know personally who, it's a huge pain in the ass. I think he's like a big time like libertarian type, like, don't tread on me. And he and I had a little bit of a back and forth on our friends' like comment section on Facebook, and in the end he actually said, like, you know, that's a really good point. I'm gonna think more about that. And the person whose Facebook feed we were on actually wrote me a private message and was like, holy shit, how did you do that? He's the least reasonable person I know. So I was like, you know, I know that discussions around sexual consent are inflammatory, because almost everyone has at least one experience in their past that when that topic comes up, you know, they feel their heart clench up, and for a lot of people, when they have that experience, they get defensive immediately. And I get it. I understand that. But if you're able to work past the heart clench and the fear and actually talk about it, I think a lot of people have experiences and have, you know, enough humanity in them that they can kind of get it. Ben says, I failed university and developed agoraphobia, but I also became a drag queen, and then my business popped off. That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow, way to find like creative workarounds, you know? That's badass. JC says, I find it frustrating that the reaction some people have had to Me Too hasn't been as much, oh wow, I didn't realize how uncomfortable my behavior had made people, but, oh what, we're not allowed to hit on women anymore. Like, it's not about punishing people. It's not about making it so everyone walks on eggshells. It's about learning better communication and compassion so we can heal and move on as a culture. Absolutely. That's 100% the case. It's like, and I think that's where like a lot of people, I don't like to be inflammatory. I don't like to like use buzzwords to make people feel bad. Like, that doesn't help anything. But I do think that a lot of the conversation that's come up around male entitlement, male privilege, and a lot of the backlash, you know, from those terms has like, it's come up because there have been so many people who are like, oh no, a thing that I am used to is changing, and because it's changing, I feel personally victimized. You know, like the same people who like got angry when they cast a female Doctor Who because it's different. Like, there is a huge amount of entitlement that goes behind someone saying, I'm used to this thing, and therefore if you take it away from me, you are hurting me. And I hate the fact that like male entitlement as like a hashtag, you know, has been so used in so many inflammatory conversations that it's almost like you can't bring it up anymore because you're automatically a liberal snowflake and you hate men and blah, 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 blah. Because that's really a thing, you know, like, and not just male entitlement. There's all kinds of entitlement that like all of us have experienced or possess in some way or another. And it's important. It's important that people realize the ways that privilege enter into the way that we deal with the world, especially when it comes to issues around sex and hurting people. Like, oh no, we're not allowed to hit on people anymore. No, you're allowed to hit on people. Just do it in a respectful way that's actually about the person instead of their tits. Like, that's totally doable. You just gotta like actually look at the person as a person instead of a pair of tits and then talk to them. Like, yes, that's different perhaps than how you have been operating in the world, but that doesn't mean that people just hate you because they want you to do something different than you've done before. It's very interesting. I don't know. I have a whole set of theories about this, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. because I could go on for a long time, and I've already been on here for like an hour and a half. And I have other things that I need to do. But I just, yeah, okay, yeah. JC, you're right. It's about communication and compassion. The more we can communicate around these issues that have been difficult to communicate around for years because of the way that we've all been raised, you know, in a sex-phobic culture, etc., like, it's difficult for all of us. But the fact that we don't communicate about it literally hurts everyone. I do think that there's a lot of difficulty communicating around issues of sexual assault and whatnot because women have been taught not to talk about it because it's shameful, and men have been taught not to talk about it because it's not manly to talk about it. And both of these things are hurting us. You know, I've seen so many people, you know, cis men and male-identified people who live this life of like quiet despair where they can't express themselves about anything unless it's you know, this sort of like jock mindset, like super masculine, I don't have feelings, I like to hunt or punch things, you know, and that's like my entire identity. Also sports. Like, there's so much more to a human than that. And I think that the fact that the male part of our culture has been so brainwashed to think that they can't talk about these things, it hurts them because they're not able to actually express themselves, but it also hurts people who are on the other like side of the spectrum, or, you know, not super male identified, who are often victimized by people who are walking around without the ability to express themselves, who end up hurting other people because they don't know how to communicate. And I think that so much of it is just because, like, we're all afraid. And I do think that it hurts to have conversations about sexual assault. It hurts to have conversations about our own entitlements that we all walk around with. It hurts to talk about race. You know, it hurts to talk about these things because they're hurtful, they're bad. But the more we talk about them, the more we understand them, and the more we can move forward in a better way. Like, I don't get what's hard about that. Like, as a concept, I think that it just makes sense. So I say it every time I get the opportunity, because who knows, somebody might hear me who hadn't heard that before, and I want them to think about that. Think about how communication helps. You know, therapy and life coaching are there for a reason, because communicating about things is good for you. JC says, I keep deleting everything I'm typing because I don't want to rant. Yeah, I'm like, I love this conversation, but I also don't want to necessarily force it on, like, people who are bored. So I'm like, I keep starting to say something, and then I'm like, whoa. JC says, I've been reading about trans guys suddenly, after transitioning, being shut down and told they can't speak about their trauma anymore because they have male privilege now. It's so pervasive that men can't talk about this stuff that even people who live their lives socialized as female can't even talk about it. It's so broken. Yeah. I think, like, I feel like we have so much to learn as a culture from people who have transitioned from, you know, one gender expression to another. Like, those experiences are amazing to me. Like, the few things that I've read where, especially people who, like trans men, you know, who have transitioned into living as men, I've read a few things about how the way that they're perceived and the way that they're treated in public, and even by, like, partners, has changed so drastically based on how they are perceived. And I feel like it's just the most amazing opportunity that we have to listen to those people and hear about ourselves reflected through their experience and the things that they've gone through. And, you know, as much as it's a really scary time for trans folks right now in America, and things are scary and violent and bad, I do think that we are moving toward a world where trans people have more of a voice and are taken more seriously, and I really, really embrace the opportunities that are coming our way through being able to listen more to trans people. wish that, like we were saying, you know, communication helps everything, and I do feel like, first, trans people have to be communicated about more. They have to communicate more. We have to communicate more to them and with them and about them. And unfortunately, a lot of people who get the heart clenchy when they think about things that are scary to them often react badly. And so we have to go through a turbulent period where people are freaking out and possibly hurting people. And I wish that that was not true, but I do hope that it is at least indicative that we're changing for the better. So, Wendy says, this has been a wonderful way to spend the afternoon. Thank you. Thank you so much for dropping by, Wendy. I'm so glad that you were here. It's awesome. Ben says, we all have problems. It's a matter of character if you accept the problems of others as real. That's a really good way of putting it. I like that. Okay, well, I've been streaming for way longer than I usually do. And like I said, I have a lot that I have to do today. One of those things is I am preparing for my first round of one-on-one writing coaching. It's going to be happening this week. So I have to put together a few materials, like get all of that ready, and that's on my schedule for today. I also have to edit the rest of a book, because these are two things that I do, people. I do writing coaching and I do editing, and writing coaching is mostly me helping people make their books actually happen, like actually getting it down on paper. I have a crap ton of experience in publishing. Not only did I write this book, I have edited dozens of people's books for everything from like gigantic mainstream publishers to self-publishing first-time novelists. And I have also been a publisher. I publish comics. I have been at the helm of an online magazine. I have worked for the biggest publisher in the world as a salaried employee. I have lots of experience, and what I want to do with writing coaching is reach out to people who in 2019 have decided that they're gonna write their book, but who are feeling a little overwhelmed because it's a huge undertaking. I want to sit down with those people and I want to be like, hey, I've been through it. I know how to help you. Let's do this. I'm particularly good at helping people with organization and with goal setting and planning. And those are really big parts, I believe, of writing a book, because it's a massive amount of information that you need to get from your head out into the world. And being able to make a structure for it, follow that structure, is a huge part of being able to get started. So what I'm doing right now is taking clients who would like one-on-one writing coaching to help them get their book out into the world. And I am starting my first round of sessions this week. And I'll be doing that all throughout 2019. So anybody out there who is interested, I would absolutely love to hear from you. You can contact me. I mean, this is going to be on Facebook at Lynsey G. Writer. You can always contact me through there or any of my other social media. I will put links in the notes at the bottom of this video on Facebook and on YouTube. I'm also doing workshopping. That is taking a little bit longer to get going. I'm going to be starting a book writing workshop on the 15th, I believe. And again, you can contact me about that. I am still looking for a few people to take part in that. So I need to get a lot of that stuff ready to go today. I also, like I said, I do book editing. I do everything from like content editing, like the real editing part of the book where I look at the whole thing and say, this character needs more of this, and the large scale stuff, the whole way down to like proofreading almost finished books where I make sure that your commas are in the right places. I have tons of experience in all of this. Love doing it. And if you have something that you need help with, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm taking work. I'm actually about to finish up one of my big projects, and then I'm pretty open after that. So that's what I'm doing this afternoon. Wendy says, you are very Carrie Bradshaw. You know, I really want to be a Miranda, but I think I'm a Carrie. I'm like the sex writer, so I guess. Anyway, Wendy is very much a Samantha. JC says, thanks for the stream, Lynsey, and thank you for sharing all of this. I think conversations like this are very healing. and I appreciate that you are an advocate for porn, but not afraid to criticize the uglier side of it. Those conversations are super important, and how guys like Ron get banned from conventions. Yeah, you know, I hadn't really thought about that, but like, I probably was like one of, I think it was me and like 6 other women were interviewed for that article, which means I'm probably like one of the people most responsible for getting him banned from that convention. I never really thought about that before. That's crazy. Wow. I have real world consequences, people. Holy crap. Wendy says, I'm proud of it too. Yeah. Wendy, I don't know if you have an Instagram, but you can look at Instagrams, whether you have one or not, online. There is an Instagram account called Every Outfit on SATC, Every Outfit on Sex and the City. It's like a fan account where they'll go to an episode and find an awesome outfit and just like talk about it and deconstruct it. And in that, there's a whole lot of fun Sex and the City like commentary. I think you'd probably get a kick out of it. There's also this other account, what's his name? Carrie Dragshaw. So there's this guy who was very like in his natural personality, a very flamboyant person, but who works in like the business world and was worried about being like too gay for work. So he developed this persona called Carrie Dragshaw, where he recreates Carrie Bradshaw's outfits from Sex and the City and puts them on Instagram. And he's the best person ever. Okay, probably the most basic thing about me, or one of the most basic things about me, people, is that when I was in college, me and my roommates would all hang out on Sundays when we were hungover and watch Sex and the City, like marathons. And I came to, like, I have such a warm place in my heart for Sex and the City now because, like, those were such nice times. You know, like, we'd order food and just, like, sit around and watch Sex and the City, and it was just, like, so nice and healing that I have a soft spot for it, and I am loving that Sex and the City is kind of having, like, a little bit of a fan resurgence right now, so I'm kind of a little geeky about all that. Yeah, enjoy that. If anybody out there is into Sex and the City, Carrie Dragshaw and Every Outfit on SATC are both really fun. Okay. All right, that was a really good note to end on. I will be back in 2 weeks. What's that? The 20th. The 20th of January, I will be back reading Chapter 10, which I actually didn't see what that is going to be. Vegas and the Sex Toy Revelation. Oh, yes. Okay, so the next chapter is going to be about the first time I went to the AVN convention in Las Vegas, and how I realized that as a sex and porn writer, I could also be a sex toy reviewer, which was a big moment for me. So that's a fun chapter because it really it talks about the AVN convention and like what a wild time that is. So join me again for a slightly less intense chapter reading, and thank you everyone so much for coming out. This was a really, really great chat. You all made me feel very comfortable talking about something that was really hard to talk about, and I really appreciate your support a lot. I hope that I will see you again at another live stream, and oh, I hope that you buy my book. You can buy it directly from me. I can give you a signed copy. I will put the link in the notes on the video. Just saying. Okay. All right. I guess that's it. Everybody have an awesome rest of your weekend, and I will see you in 2 weeks. All right.